You're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Tonight we're talking about age. We're talking about how we feel about getting older, about being wiser. And the other day I woke up, a couple days ago, I don't know why I started researching and being interested in what I started researching, but I did it anyway. I wanted to know more about the age that we have when it comes to other planets. Like, how old are we on different planets and different worlds? And the reason why I was interested in that was because I wanted to know, are we the same age here? And obviously we're not. Obviously there's different days and how long days are and how long years are because of the way that planets travel around the sun and how long it takes to do that. And I thought it was interesting. So I went online, and there's several places you can go online. There's one that's called exploratorium.edu. And on exploratorium.edu, you can actually you can enter your birth date, month, day, and year, and you can calculate how old you are on every planet in our solar system. And I thought it was really, really cool because I love doing stuff like this. Because, I always feel that sometimes, well, not always. I shouldn't say that. I am a therapist. You're not supposed to ever say always and never. That's something that you shouldn't say. I have clients that come in a lot of times, especially couples therapy, where somebody's always saying that exactly. So-and-so's always doing this, or so-and-so never does it. And we realize that we're not always and we're not never. So we're somewhere in between. So getting back to the entire concept of how old we are on different planets. And I thought it was interesting because if you look at Earth days, our Earth days are, roughly 24 hours a day. And it's very interesting because you look at various different planets and you can find out when your next birthday is, when it's going to hit, but also when your birthdays would be in other planets. And I thought it was so cool because I'm turning, in 2 years, I'm turning 21 in Mars, so I got that going for me. I'll be legal and able to drink, and so I'm really stoked about that. And so anytime that people are actually, asking me for my ID, I can just tell them that I'll be turning 21 soon in Mars. And I do appreciate getting ID'd and checked because that's something that I relish and something that's actually been happening more and more in the past year, which is kind of interesting since I am actually getting older, I guess, on this planet at this time. And the reason why I bring up the fact that I'm 21 on Mars is because I think it's interesting. I think that a lot of times we define ourselves by our age. And I'm going to ask the age-old question tonight. Does that make any sense? Does defining ourselves by our age make any sense? I feel that a lot of times we make judgment calls based on how old we are to determine if we are ahead of the game, behind the 8 ball. Are we really that great in the game of life, or have we really kind of screwed up? I think we make a lot of decisions when it comes to our success and us as a people by determining our age. Because I think sometimes instead of looking at ourselves as a human and realizing that we're given an entire lifetime to do something, why do we constantly look at the age? Why do people constantly want to tell you your age? And this is something that I'm a little different with than a lot of people I know, especially as an individual, as a person, but also as a therapist, is that I don't agree with age. I don't agree with sitting there wondering, am I too old? Am I too young? I really don't think that that has any bearing at all. However, our society that we live in seems to feel different. It seems to feel different to a certain degree because it seems that the younger you are, the more chances you have. The older you are, the less chances you have that things are going to work out if they haven't already worked out so far. So let's begin talking about how we see age. How do we see our age and our aging process today, tomorrow, when we're 50, when you're 21, when you're 75, when you're 16? How do you see it? And the first thing I see when we think about age is the concept of it's a problem. It's a problem because if you begin with your life and you realize, let's say, you're one of those kind of people that love to vote. And I know there's not a lot of you out there, but in the process, there's some of you out there that love to vote and wanted to vote your entire life, but you couldn't until you were what? 18. For some of you, didn't have like the need to vote so much as you wanted the need to drink. And for me, and I think for most people listening, the drinking age was 21. And so in order to drink, what happened? You had to either fake that you were 21, get a fake ID, or just not drink, or have somebody else buy it for you and bring it over. One way or another, there was a limitation or a problem based on our age. Let's continue with this problematic thought process when it comes to age. When you pass 21, it's like when you hit 30 for a woman. If you hit 30 and you're not married yet, people ask you, especially your relatives, what's wrong with you? When you hit 40 for men, same thing applies. What's wrong with you? Why haven't you gotten married? Men have a little more leeway than women. When women hit 39, 40, people start asking them, are they going to plan on having children because they got to do it soon? Oh no, it could be a problem because of your age. Really? But this whole age thing, like you can get certain coverage if you're this old, but you can't get it if you're that old. You can get this, but you can't do that. You can run for the President of the United States if you're 35. I believe you have to be 35 to run. And the FBI, I think when you're 35, you can no longer do field work because you're too old. Maybe that's 40. But yeah, think about it. It's like this whole age thing. It's like it becomes a problem. And we see age as this hurdle, this boundary, this, albatross, really, that you have to overcome to get somewhere, to do something, to create something, to be something, to be to the next level. And I feel that that's not necessarily true. I feel that we were dealt a bill of goods that is no longer needed and to me is obsolete. And tonight I'm going to prove how dating ourselves is obsolete, doesn't work for us, doesn't help us, but better yet, it holds us back. How do we see age besides the idea of a problem, an albatross, or a hurdle? The next thing we see about age is it's a deterrent. It's a deterrent. So we're deterred to not do something at a certain age because we're too young, or we're deterred to not do something at a certain age because we're too old. The other day, I read an article about a lady that went back to medical school. She went back to school to go through medical school to, eventually become a doctor. And, she was probably in her late 60s. And I brought it up and I thought it was interesting. If you can afford it and you want to do it, why not? And I brought it up to a couple of people I know, and they said, that's rude. That's not cool. And I said, what do you mean that's not cool? They're using the time and the energy of the teachers that they need to be teaching people that are of age that will actually go to medical school and practice. And I said, you know what? I think that's wrong. I think that if you want to, I'm not saying that she's going to have a long career. We don't know how long she's going to live. She could be the healthiest woman on the planet. She could live till she's 120. Come on. She could practice for 40 more years. I mean, I don't know about that, but let's give or take. But the problem, I thought, was that people were actually judging her for doing it because she was too old. Why not? Life's too short to define yourself by a certain age throughout your whole life. And don't we all have a tendency of doing that to a degree? Think about it. I have clients that come in all the time that watch their friends' Instagram and Facebook pages and are constantly comparing their life to their friends and wishing that they were getting engaged to get married. And the first thing out of most of these women's mouth is that they are of a certain age. And that age that they are should determine the fact that they should be married by now. The average is 25 to 30. And they feel as though it's time that they need to be married. Again, I stress the fact that this is just an age. Why do we define our happiness, but better yet, our success rate in life by a number? Interesting. The next thing and the next way that we define age and how we see it is about legality, right? The legal sense of it. How legal are you legal to vote? Are you legal to drink? We also look at age in the direction of, are you in a good spot? Are you in a good place in life, right? And we define ourselves by the age process because we ask ourselves, based on the age that we are we in a good spot in life? Are we in a good place in life? How is it going so far based on our age? And a question that I like to bring up is, why? Why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we do this to ourselves? Because a lot of times it's not balanced, is it? A lot of times it's not balanced. It's not because we make decisions in our mind about how old we are and then make decisions in our mind about how successful we should be by that age. And most of this doesn't add up. This argument doesn't hold water because how do you know that you should be in that place by this time in your life? And if you're not, you're a failure. How does that make any sense? Because it doesn't to me. It doesn't make any sense to me because we define ourselves based on a qualification of where we should be in life. Based on that qualification, we define and decide if we are successful, unsuccessful, haven't lived up to our full potential. I mean, you can fill in the blank here. I've done it before. I've done it several times. I still catch myself doing it, to be honest with you. You'll see somebody in the newspaper that's like 16. And they're taking the world by storm because they're the new greatest, golfer. They're the next best Tiger Woods. Like as a kid, And you sit there and you go, man, that kid's he's like so talented or she or whatever, so talented at 16 and can do all this. And look at me. And I think a lot of us have been there before. I mean, even back in the day with Tiger Woods, you remember? I mean, I was pretty young too, but think about it. You judged yourself off that too. Tiger was young. And I think a lot of us judge ourselves based on the talent and the skill. And we sit there and we worry. We go, man, we're not a child prodigy doing X, Y, Z. We're behind the 8 ball. And then some of us wager our success by a certain age, which is a good thing in the beginning, but it also becomes this albatross because eventually maybe we're not able to live up to our expectations consistently, especially in our older age, and we get down and depressed. And you see that a lot with Hollywood folk who maybe their career kind of slows down. Maybe their popularity goes down a little bit. Maybe several roles weren't perfect. Maybe they were looked over for various roles. And over time, it kind of is a lackluster deal where their career kind of starts changing and ebbing and flowing in a less visible role. And that can be pretty depressing. I mean, think about even Hollywood stars who were big throughout their whole life until they got very old and weren't able to act anymore as far as to be on camera or to move around. And that's got to be depressing. Because your whole life you judged yourself based on your success, and you judged your success based on your popularity or your work or your money. And when that changes, your value of yourself also too changes. And that value turns around and starts changing, and you no longer value yourself as you should. The next way that we see age is that we find ourselves behind the eight ball. I have friends and clients who feel as though their life, like their good years, are behind them. And some of them feel as though they never really had a chance yet because perhaps dealing with addiction or substance abuse or alcoholism, where they feel right now when they're sober that they have very little time to catch up. And I understand, because sometimes when we feel as though the world is passing us by and we feel like we haven't maybe given it our all, or we've tried but we've had other things in our way, I think that we can feel as though we are behind the eight ball. And it's critical to realize how age directly relates to that. Our thought process of age directly relates to feeling as though you're behind the eight ball, because there would be no other reason to feel that way. If we weren't just thinking about age and how we're getting old and therefore we're behind the eight ball, if we didn't see it that way, we would never be behind the eight ball, because why would we be behind? There's no way to be behind, because there's nothing to be behind in. It's all in our thought process when it's based on age. And that's the problem, is that when we judge ourselves based on our age, we overlook the beauty in our life, and we substitute that beauty with a feeling of stress or anxiety, or feeling as though we can't conquer because, yes, again, we are behind the eight ball because we should be on XYZ right now, but instead we're not. And we're 35 or 45, and life is passing us by. And I think we have to redirect our way. And later on, I'll be giving some tips on how to really change your dynamic on looking at age, and ways to actually look at age that are positive and productive and hold a purpose, instead of defeating, angry, and cause resentment. Because when we look at age a certain way, it's a scary process. Some of us look at age every day to the point where, you're just wondering when you're going to die. I have some friends that literally read the obituaries every day. And some of them read it because they know so many people. They just don't know if they've missed a funeral or death or something. But, the biggest thing about this whole deal is that the age quotient is so detrimental when it comes to judging our lives based on age. The next thing that we do when we're thinking about age is that we look at ourselves sometimes as being too young. Or we look at our kids as being too young, or our friends as being too young. You're too young to do that. You got your whole life ahead of you. You're too young to do that. Or you're too young. You shouldn't even be thinking about that. Why the heck are you thinking about that? What the hell's wrong with you? You're way too young. Well, who says? What is this deal? Too young, too old? Why can't we just be? And I remember when I was a kid, wanting to do things, and my parents were like, oh, you can't do that. I wanted to take an internship one time with a pretty prominent business person in the United States, and it sucked because I had a chance to be basically a coffee go-getter, a jack of all trades, a lackey per se, an intern really. But I was still in middle school, and I couldn't drive myself, and I lived in the suburbs, and there wasn't really a bus line that went. And my mother was like, you're not going to take the bus. You're too young. You're in middle school. You're in 7th grade. You're not going to go take the bus. Even if there was a bus that could get you all the way into town, which would be like 45 minutes to an hour, you're not going to take the bus. And I remember I didn't have any ability or any option around that. I had to listen, and I had to do what I was told because I couldn't get around that. Because I didn't have a car, and I wasn't an adult, and I was considered too young. And now I have interns that come to my office and come to the studio, And yes, they are high school seniors, and they are actually taken via bus to my office, which is so great. But I look back at that hopeful internship with a little sadness. Because you know what? I wasn't too young. It was just right, but it didn't happen. It did not come to pass. On the flip side of the age quotient, we have people that sit there and say, you're too old. We're too old for this shit. Too old. What do you mean you're too old? I mean, at what age are you just too old and you might as well just pack it up? Life's passed you by. You might as well just let it go because it's not going to get any better. You're only going to keep getting older, so you might as well get back in bed, put a bathrobe on, never really wear pants again, and just deal with life and just get old. Get over the fact. I mean, what the heck is that about? And I have friends and I even have family members who are really stuck on their age. I bet you have a family member like that. One of those members of the family where you love them. You do love them. You love them. But they focus on their age too much. They focus on their age too much. And what I mean by that is they're always making themselves older. And in the process, they're always making everybody around them older, too. Now, that happened 25 years ago. Well, no, it was more like 5. But thanks for making everybody feel extremely old. And they define themselves by their age, and because they think that their age is old, they act old. There's even a tendency for them to even look old because they're playing the role of being old. And like I say, age is nothing but a number, but when we define ourselves as being too old, we're no longer participants. We are now sideline folk on the side of life, making judgment call about our age. And I'm one of those people that I am not going to do that. I am not going to do that. Even when I'm 80 years old, I am not 80 years old. If somebody tries to throw that in my face about my age, I'm going to kick them down to the ground. I swear to God. I'm not an angry person, and I'm not somebody that beats people up, but I get tired of hearing people always tell other people how old they are. And for once and for all, I think that it's worthless information that does nothing for nobody. You're too young, you're too old. What that means is those are ways that you aren't involved. And I don't like it. The next way that we look at age is that it's too early, it's too late. It's too early for you to do that in life. Or it's too late. It's too early for you to get married. You're only 18. You should wait. It's too early for you to enlist in the military. You're only 18. You should wait. It's too early for you to think about having kids. You just got married. You're 21 years old. You got your whole life ahead of you. You should wait. On the flip side, I was eavesdropping, maybe. Not necessarily eavesdropping, but I was listening to a conversation that didn't have anything to do with me from a table next door to my table, right next to the table next to mine at a restaurant. And my friend had gone to the bathroom, and there was a long line. There was like a one-stall deal, so there was a long line. And I could see her from the distance, and I waved. I was kind of laughing because I knew it was going to take a long time. And so I was listening to the folks next to me talking, and they were like, oh, my gosh, I went to so-and-so's wedding. I couldn't believe it. And the other lady was like, really? What do you think about all that? And then the other lady goes, well, 45-year-old woman, never been married? And the other lady's like, man, I wonder what's wrong with that. And then she goes, well, the husband's never been married too, and he's 52. What the heck's up with that? She goes, and I couldn't believe they had a regular ceremony. Like, she wore a white dress and everything. Why? She's in her 40s. I can't believe they would even do something like that. They should have just gone to the justice of the peace and been done with it and had a party instead of acting like this is some big deal. And I was listening to this thinking, man, that is just so rude. It's never too late to get in a relationship. It's never too late to get married. How come people make judgment calls based on someone's age that they shouldn't even have a proper wedding? Because they're too old? I mean, really? I mean, to me, that's even more of a reason to have a wedding. You're 45, you've never been married, you're a woman. That's a big deal. The guy's 52, he's never been married. That's kind of a big deal. These two come together, they're in love, they get married. This is a big deal. It's a big wedding for them. I don't think they're going to get married again, hopefully. I mean, it's pretty late for the first one. They're probably thinking this is the only marriage they're ever going to have, so they might as well do it nice. And you know what? She might have been dreaming about getting married her whole life, and she finally met the right guy. Maybe she put her career first. Who knows? But the point is, who cares? If you want to have a wedding and you want to have a big wedding, you should be able to have a wedding. That is so rude. And, I think the thing goes back to the definition of age, right? If she wasn't looked upon as her mid-40s and never been married, the conversation about her having a wedding or not having a wedding would have never come up. It all goes back to the defining of age. Like that other comment that was made in that conversation, that neither one have been married and they're so old. I mean, I looked at these women. I mean, it's sad because eventually they're going to get that old too, right? It's just the way life is. But how come you can get off telling people that they're too old to get married in a normal wedding? They should just go to the justice of the peace and be quiet with it already. Because they're too old. You know what? Too old does not make sense to me. What about life is ahead of you? You have your whole life ahead of you. You have your whole life ahead of you. But doesn't everybody have their entire life? Don't they have their whole life ahead of them too? I mean, I think a lot of times we look at age as the glass half empty, always. Always. We never see age as maybe something cool. I mean, we never see age as a positive thing for the most part. I mean, some of you do out there, some of you do, but most people don't. Most people are scared and shocked. The older they get, the more scared they become, the more stressed out they become. Maybe health issues get problematic. All that kind of stuff. And so there's a little more stress and strain. But I do feel to a degree that all of us have our entire life ahead of us. But just on that flip side of that is that some people say the best of their life is behind them. The best years of their life is behind them. Think about if you woke up every day and the best years of your life were behind you. What the heck? What the heck does that mean? You might as well not even get out of the bed. I mean, to me, that's just painful right there. That's just painful. If you're not taking some sort of major antidepressant medication, I would evaluate the fact that you should probably stay in bed and hope and pray that things get better. Because it's time. It is time for things to get better. You deserve it. I'm telling you that. You deserve it more than anything in the world for things to get better. But that's a really bad way of looking at life. The best years are behind you. And I think a lot of times we look at life that way because of our definition of age. Because age is such a big quotient in our life because the age concern. How old are we? How much have we done? How much success have we found at this age? What have we missed out on in life? And I beg the question that I don't feel like we ever miss out on anything until we allow ourselves to, until we tell ourselves that there is no option, that we have missed the boat, that the boat left us because we're too old. And I feel that we can successfully change our thought process on age. And by doing so, we can directly affect every aspect of our life, especially success, being authentic, personal acceptance, and also seeing that there's more options in life than what we've ever dreamed. A good example the other day, a friend of mine told me, he's like, you know what, Ashley, I turned 45. And I'm starting a new career at 45. I moved to Las Vegas. Moved to Los Angeles. Sorry, Las Vegas is great, but they moved to Los Angeles. And they're trying to get a job in the film industry. And they went to school and they got all that education. And they're like, I totally switched careers. at 40, put myself through school, and now I'm out in LA. He's like, what kind of idiot am I? I mean, what am I doing? And I was like, well, I think it all depends on how you look at it. Some people would say, wow, you're already 45. It's a little late. You should have started this a long time ago, and you know what? Sorry. Wish you the best of luck. But my theory is this. You've already done something in life, and you liked it okay, but you didn't like it enough to do it your whole life, right? So you changed careers, and at 45, you finished school, and you moved out to LA, right? It'll probably take you a few years, now depending on your career and what you've chosen. I mean, like, you know, in my career that I've chosen, it'll take a few years of dedication and determination every single day for the rest of your life, for probably about 10 years before, you know, you really hit it big. And film and certain businesses, you know, it could take 2 to 3 years to get in there and really make something. But even if let's just say that it takes you 5 years to rev up your career, and that puts you at 50 years old. 50. At 50, you have a budding film career that you really love and you're very happy about. If you're in good health, I mean, if you're in good health, I mean, at the least you have a good 20 years left, maybe 30. For some people, 40 years. I mean, I kind of see life, and I know that this sounds wild, but I see life as in two perspectives. You have 1 to 50 and 50 on. And I feel that the 50 on is where really amazing things happen. But you have to embrace the 50 on. You have to embrace 50 on, because when you embrace 50 on, you embrace all that comes with it. You embrace all options. You're no longer looking and devaluing 50 on, but you're actually valuing it because you realize you have another chance. You can do 2 different careers in your life. You can do 10 different careers in your life. You can get married, as many times as you want to. You can make changes in your life. You can do all kinds of stuff. You can get spiritually enlightened at 50. Whatever it is, it's a big deal. And we never stop learning until we actually make the choice to stop learning. And I feel that if we kind of look at our life from 1 to 100, and for most of us, 100 is probably the average mean age of our own passing over the rainbow bridge and moving on. Because most of us are quite healthy. Science has really picked up. We have a lot of stuff there. And I would say, some people would sit there and argue with me and say 75, but I'm going to go with 100. For a lot of the millennials and everything else, I'm going to go with 100. And I'm not trying to depress anybody, but I am trying to say, hey, you got 100 years on planet Earth. Don't stop on year 50 and say the best of life is behind you, because you just waste half of your lifetime. When we define ourselves by our age, we lose out on spontaneity, happiness, joy. We miss out on everything that really matters. Because we're too busy making judgment calls on ourselves because we haven't done something by a certain time. We haven't completed something by a certain time. We're unsuccessful because we haven't done this or that. And sadly enough, what does that do to us? What does that do? That puts us in a negative mindset. It makes us less authentic because we're trying to hide who we truly are. Because who we truly are isn't good enough. Because we would be a lot wiser or stronger or financially richer by this age. But why? Why? And why does that matter? So let's talk real quick, because before we go into the ways that you can change your aspect and thought process on how to look at age, I want to talk about age on different planets, because I think this is so cool. Okay, so for example, for everybody out there who was born in 1980, if you were born in 1980, if you were on Mercury, you would have 221 Mercurian days. However, you would be 146.6 years old. On Mercury, you'd be 146 years old. 147.6 years old. So basically 148 years old you'd be if you're on Mercury. On Venus, if you were born in 1980, you would be 53 Venus days, and you would be 57 years old. On Earth, obviously, you'd be 35, and you would be 12,988 days old. On Mars, you would be about the same amount of days, just a little roughly off, about 12,610, but you would be 19. Woo! Sweet 19. That's a good age. What about Jupiter? You'd be 31,000 days old, but you would be 3. So for all you out there that say that you are getting younger, you could be 3 years old. For Saturn, you'd be 1 year old. For Uranus, you'd be a half a year old. For Neptune, you'd be 20% of 1 year. And for Pluto, you'd be 0.1. Your next birthday in Pluto would be in 2229. Isn't that wild? So that's what, think about it. Think about how crazy that is. And the reason why I bring it up is age should mean nothing. Age should mean nothing to you. Just because you're old or young doesn't matter. It's all the way you define. It's all the way you feel. And the reason why I bring that up about the different planets is, see, you're a different age on every different planet. Now, how do you define yourself if you're half a year old? How do you define yourself if you're 180 right now? Think about it. And on that planet, would you be an elder or would you be a young one? But does it matter? No. And that's why I bring it up, is because age means nothing. And depending on what planet you're on, changes anyway. So let's look at the ways that you can begin to look at age in a different way and how to do that right now to be successful in your thought on yourself, about your age, and what's coming up next. Because you know what? Life is getting sweeter. And as we know life gets sweeter, as long as we accept the fact that life is sweeter and it's getting sweeter, it will continue to get sweeter for us. However, if life is pungent and painful, it will continue to do the same. So let's look at the ways that we can look at life. The first way that we can begin to look at age is not to. Don't look at your age. Don't focus on your age. Don't think about how old you are. Don't sit there and count the days. Don't make yourself older. And you know what I specify the most is don't put a number on it. Don't put a number on it. It's not worth it. Why? Why do we want to put limitations on ourselves? Because it's really not for anybody else's limitations. It's our own limitations placed upon our own self. Second thing, ways to look at age, is to realize that age is nothing but a number. Okay? Age is nothing but a number. I mean, think about it. If you were born in 1980, right? On Mars, you'd be 18. On Saturn, you'd be 1. On Mercury, you'd be 148. So what does it matter? 148, 20, 19, 35. What does it matter? Age is nothing but a number. And when we begin to realize that age is nothing but a number, we begin to act that way. We begin to act that way, and that's what's so cool about it, because we get to embrace ourselves, to embrace our life, to find the love, to find the respect for ourselves. But better yet, we're able to embrace ourselves without defining ourselves in any way, without seeing our life as being a problem, our age as being a problem or deterrent, a legal issue, that we're in a good place or not a good place, or we're behind the 8 ball, whether we're too young or too old, or too early or too late. You know, life is ahead of you or life is all behind you. We stop looking at that because age is nothing but a number, and we don't look at age anymore. Third, it's never too late. I found out in life that it is never too late. And, you know, Betty White is one of those people that I look up to because she has worked for so long in the entertainment industry. And she is so amazing because she is just, she's a ball of energy. She's got a lot going on. And, I mean, she's still on TV today. She's still on TV today. And she's 93 years old. She's 93 years young. And you know, I mean, you have to admit, that's pretty remarkable. And she's on TV. She's giving out awards, you know, at the Oscars. I mean, it's absolutely amazing, her career. And she's 93, and you don't see her, well, I can't do this, or I can't do that, or I'm not going to be able to take on that role, or I can't do that because if I take on that role, I'm too old. No. Too old? No, she doesn't think about too old. I mean, think about it. Bob Barker's 92. Sandra Bullock's 51. Right? And you know, they don't sit there and get up every day and go, oh man, I can't believe I'm 51. Judi Dench is 81 years old. And it's time for us to realize that you can be successful and you can make major life changes at any age, and you can reap the benefits as long as you realize that you are allowed to be happy at any age, and that it isn't too late, and that you can go back to medical school if you want to. And if you want to have a wedding and it's your first wedding and you're 60 years old, you can have a great, amazing wedding and invite your friends and let the sourpusses stay home. You owe it to yourself to enjoy every day of your life. And to stop categorizing things as being too late or too early. And last but not least, my last piece of advice on this show for right now, not my last piece of advice ever, but just for this show, is remember that the present moment does not have an age. When you're in the present moment, there is no age. There's no like, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that. The present moment is similar as your present self. In the present self, there is no age. In the present moment and in the present self, there is no age. And so when we live in the present and not in the past and not in the future, we're basically ageless. And if we allow ourselves to be ageless, we stop putting ourselves on the sidelines and we begin to live. We begin to live again. And to accept the fact that maybe even if we are 45 or 50, there's still a lot more time. Life doesn't end at 50. Life just got started. Because for most of you listeners, the older we get, the wiser we get. The more in tune we get to ourselves, the more at peace we become with ourselves. The more joy we have in our life. Because we're no longer judging ourselves. We're no longer being weirded out about how other people feel about us. Because eventually we get to that point where we don't care. Because we're happy and we're joyful in the present moment and where we are today. Stay tuned. I've got a great show for you coming up next as well. Check out AshleyBurgess.com, Ashley, BERGES.com for any content or information that you might want on relationships or love or work or career success. Also, don't hesitate to follow me on Twitter at Ashley Burgess, and I will follow you right back. And I can't wait to hear some comments as well as following Perspectives with Ashley Burgess on Facebook. I put a lot of neat content on Perspectives with Ashley Burgess on Facebook, and I'd love to have you engaged in the conversation because I want to hear from you. So remember, for some of you out there, you're 19 years old or maybe 21 on Mars, and that should be where your mindset is. Stay tuned. I got a great show for you next. And Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess. Well, you know what? I'll be back this time, man. You got it. I'll be back this time in 3 shakes.
Let's think about this for a sec, Ted. Why would somebody put a guarantee on a box? Very interesting.
Go on, I'm listening.
Here's the way I see it, Ted. Guy puts a fancy guarantee on a box because he wants you to feel all warm and toasty inside.
Yeah, makes a man feel good.
Of course it does. Why shouldn't it? You figure you put that little box under your pillow at night, the guarantee fairy might come by and leave a quarter. Am I right, Ted?
What's your point?
The point is, how do you know the fairy isn't a crazy glue sniffer? Building model airplane, says the little fairy. Well, we're not buying it. He sneaks into your house once, that's all it takes. Next thing you know, there's money missing off the dresser and your daughter's knocked up. I've seen it 100 times.
But why do they put a guarantee on the box then?
Because they know all they sold you was a guaranteed piece of That's all it is, isn't it? Hey, if you want me to take a dump in a box and mark it guaranteed, I will. I got spare time. But for now, for your customer's sake, for your daughter's sake, you might want to think about buying a quality product from me.